Thank everybody for coming. Go ahead and call the board meeting to order for April 27th at 7 p.m.
What'd I do?
And with that, Penny, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Guyer.
Here.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger. Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And Trustee Marisak.
Let's try to get over here.
All right, we do have a quorum this evening. Thank you. I did it again. At this time, I would like to ask, I can see if everyone can rise and join me in the pledge.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands,
and
one
stand
nation,
nation under God, indivisible,
and justice.
liberty, justice for all.
All right, thank you. I know that's awkward. We're all going to look forward to the day when we can do that in person. All right, with that, I'm going to move on to, actually, I should say, just so everybody's aware, Village Hall is open, so if there was any residents that wanted to attend the meeting, could be there with Jeff in person right now. We're also live streaming this on our YouTube channel. So we are, although we're not in person, we are being as transparent as we can during this time. So moving on to item 4 this evening is the public comment period. This is our 2-minute opportunity. We did allow for residents to submit their comment or question ahead of time. And Jeff, did you receive any?
We have not received any comments.
Okay. And nobody's in Village Hall with you?
No, just me and
Okay.
Jared.
All right. If I could remind folks on the call, if you could mute your line when you're not speaking, that'd be helpful. Getting a little feedback. Okay. With that, I'm going to read the consent items and then entertain a motion for approval. I have minutes of the village board meeting of April 13th, executive session minutes of April 13th, accounts payable through April 23rd, 2020, proclamation dedicating May 3rd through 9th as 2020 as Municipal Clerks Week. The appointment of, or the reappointment of Ryan Morton to the Police Pension Board for a term through April 30th, 2020. The appointment or reappointment of Eric Barnes, Police Pension Board for a term through April 30th of 2022. And the final is the reappointment of Brian Baer to Board of Police and Fire Commissioners for a term through April 30th, 2023. Any comment, question, motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, call the roll, Penny.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you. With that, I am going to kind of skip out of order. I know we have our liquor license request on the call. If there's no objection, I would like to move to item A for items for discussion, which is the liquor license request for 1890 Douglas Road. And Administrator Zolt, you have a summary of this item?
Yes, in your packet, you had both the request for the liquor license from the requesting party as well as the menu that they are proposing. The party is on the line here and is happy to, I think he's going to give you a presentation, answer questions. As we usually do at the end, we're going to ask you if this is something you'd like to move forward with, if it's something you do not want to move forward with, or if there's more information you're looking for from us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Youssef to give you his presentation.
Hi, my name is Imad Youssef, and today I present myself to apply for a liquor license. Like, I'm going to have a franchise. It's called Baba's Famous Steak and Lemonade, and I would like to serve just beer and wine to be served with our foods. I'm going to serve some fish, chicken, and some different foods. and I will be more than happy if I get the license. I would like just to get the beer and the wine, nothing else. That's for the address 1890 Douglas Road in Montgomery.
I have a question, Mr. Youssef, if I may.
Yes, please.
The way that Lucky's was laid out was there was a lot of gaming in the middle, and it was kind of surrounded by the restaurant.
Okay.
Forgive me, I've looked through your menu. Your menu is extensive. I look forward to it. Are you going to be having video gaming at your location?
No,
Okay.
no.
Good question. All right. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one. On your menu, sir,
Yes.
it showed 900 North Lake Street, and there's also other restaurants by that name, like in Bolingbrook and on. Is this a franchise?
This is a franchise, yes.
So you are the franchise owner of just this one?
I'm going to have the franchise for this address 1890 Douglas Road. That used to be Lucky's.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question for Mr. Joseph.
Yes, please.
With the current situation, what kind of time frame are you looking at that you would be able to open?
During the situation, it's hard, but since there is a curbside pickup and delivery through like Uber Eats or all these companies, they are working. I hope to be like by the end of August, because the place needs a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I thought there was still quite a bit of work to do there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I have no problem with this liquor license. I don't know if we're to that point yet or not, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect.
I have no issue with it either. I look forward to eating there.
Yeah, I applaud Mr. Youssef for pursuing this type of venture, given the climate and the situation. So, welcome to the community, and good luck from my perspective.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you're gonna be happy with our food, with our service. Everything will be great. And we hope to help the community and to do our best.
All right.
Yeah, I'm for this too, but this liquor license will only be for this gentleman, right? Not the franchise?
No. It's just for this location, just for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm for it.
Thank you so much.
I'm good. All right.
Good also, Matt.
All right, perfect. I can't see you on here. Okay. All right. So at this point, I'd just ask you to work with the police department and village staff to kind of get this in order. Assuming all of that, shakes out, then we'll put this on a future meeting to issue the liquor license.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Youssef.
Thank you, sir.
We'll reach out to you about the next steps then. I'll reach out to you about the next steps.
All right, please. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And you enjoy your evening. You can certainly hang out if you want to, but we'll let you go.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate your help. Thank you, and have a great night. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and bounce back up to the items for separate action that we have. The first item, item A this evening, is Resolution 2020-007, authorizing the acceptance of open space and common areas in the Blackberry Crossings West subdivision. Director of Community Development, Rich Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, this item has been long awaited. Lennar has been working to get the turf on this property that has been designated for a park for many years as a part of the Blackberry Crossing subdivision up to par. And so this is an agreement that would put together the final turnover acceptance to the Fox Valley Park District. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
I've got a question. There may be two. There are two components to this parcel, correct? One which the village would maintain, and one which the Fox Valley Park District would accept ownership of.
That's correct. The larger parcel to the west of the area that's almost a triangle that's boxed in red, to the west of that out to Dixon Road, that is the property that would go to the Park District. The property identified bordered in red is to be retained by the village.
Now, in the notes, it said the village will be maintaining this parcel. What's the timeline for Fox Valley Park District to take the deed for their piece of that parcel? Who is maintaining it until that happens? Once they do, are they maintaining their piece and then we're sending a crew to cut the other piece? How do you see that working?
It's our understanding that they will work out an agreement with a contractor to mow the property once it's turned over to the Park District. I don't believe that the Park District themselves will be mowing this. They're going to work that out with a contractor.
And so in the near term, Mark and our staff will be maintaining that turf space. Is that correct?
We will, or will contract that out as well.
And the estimated timeline for Fox Valley to take their piece of that property?
We believe that that could be accomplished this summer.
And have they indicated any timeline on development of park or what that potential park site might look like?
As of right now, we've been told that they have no capital improvement funds to develop the park, so it's yet to be determined what would be developed on the park and in what time frame.
So there's a very good chance that that's going to sit dormant and not be developed for a long time.
At least in the short term, that's correct, yes.
When that is developed, will the village or can the village work with the Park District to determine the best use of what that is, what type of park or whatever?
Absolutely. We'd be involved in the planning of the facilities on that park for sure.
And based upon what you had said earlier, Rich, the rectangle to the west of that is village property now?
Yes.
What is our planned use for that?
We don't have any specific planned use at this time. At one time, I believe that we talked about some type of a public works facility on a small scale, maybe even a salt dome of some type, or storage area. But we don't have any specific plans for the property at this time.
Just a point of clarification. On the screen that we're looking at, the red box, the non-triangle, that's the village parcel?
Correct.
And the non-highlighted rectangle would be the park site going.
Yeah, from the western border of the village property, or the western red line, all the way to Dixon Road. I'm sorry, I forgot the exact acreage. I believe it's about 14 acres. That would be the Park District property.
Okay. And both of these will be established with turf grass now, or they kind
They are established with turf grass now.
Yeah, and the condition of that space has dramatically improved the last 3 seasons. That
Perfect.
park is a block away from my home. My child calls it Imagination Park because 10 years ago, she imagined what park was going to be developed there, and obviously that hasn't happened. So that's what we refer to that space as. But that turf grass clearly has come in, and some work over the last couple of years. I know I spent some time talking with Jared about it. For a while, they just moved field rocks around, but there really has been some improvement. It's in pretty good shape right now.
All right. Any other questions for staff on this one? All right. This one is a resolution, so I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead and call the roll.
I believe that was Trustee Guyer first.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger,
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
and Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carry 6-0. Thank you, Rich. Item B for separate action today is the employee sick leave donation policy. Administrator Zolfel is going to take this one.
Thank you, President Browley. This is a request we've received in the past, and we have a current situation where employees are asking to donate time to a fellow employee who has or is about to be out of leave time due to a major medical event. The policy was in your packets, but I'll just lay out some of the highlights for you, the way it would work. Donations would be made to a general bank and not to a specific person. So every April, employees will have the ability to donate if they want. It's purely voluntary. And then they, like I said, they don't direct it to a specific employee. It just goes into the bank, and then people can make a request as they have a need to use the time. The amount that employees can donate is a minimum of 4 hours. The most that an employee can donate each year is the lesser of 40 hours or 50% of the balance that they have. Like I said, you can make one every year. The village would also, in the policy, it's recommended the village would seed the program by taking any time. An employee can only have a maximum of 960 hours. So employees who have hit that max don't accrue time currently. So this policy would say that time that's not being accrued would go into the bank, kind of as a seeding. We currently have 2 employees that are at the max. So that's the only 2 employees you'd be looking at doing that. Again, employees would make the request when they have the need. It would go to HR, the department head, and myself to look at and determine the eligibility. And with that, I would answer any questions you have.
I've got a couple questions. Most of the sick bank policies that I've read through or seen require an employee to receive that benefit must have contributed to that bank time, but I don't see that in this policy. So just as a point of thought. Secondly, it says that in order to participate in the program or receive benefit of the program, employees have to have been with the village for a year. My question is, at what point in your employment do you start accruing your vacation time, benefit time, sick time? And what's the reasoning or rationale for requiring someone to wait a year to donate or to be a recipient of that program? And to me, it seems like if you want to be a recipient of this program, you should have a little skin in the game. Most of the policies that I've seen require participating employees who again, voluntary, have to kick in a day or 2 or 3 at the start. There's kind of an enrollment period annually. But if you want to be part of the group, you got to put a tiny bit of skin in the game. Obviously, different employees have different levels of contribution that they have the ability to make. The last question or thought I have is the seeding of the bank by the village for taking someone who's already maxed out their sick time and taking those hours that they wouldn't be accruing, throwing them in. I'm personally not a big fan of. That extends the liability in terms of dollar-wise for the village. If it's a program that the employees really are excited about and want to do, I would think you would have enough employees to start that program without the village extending additional benefit to what we already have established for staff. So just some read through it.
All right, let me see if I can.
Quick, I got to add on to one of Tom's questions. Jeff, earlier you had alluded to it's either 40 hours or 50% of what they have held over, whichever is less.
Correct.
Can you explain that to me? Why, if I have 80 hours I want to contribute to the bank, why can't I do that?
I think we'd like to see employees maintain some balance for themselves, not give it all away, and then you have a need. So we're trying to minimize what you give away, so you're still retaining some. While it's a noble to give it all away, we still want that employee to maintain some. As far as some of Trustee Betzinger's questions, you start accruing with your first paycheck, both sick and vacation. So you start accruing from the beginning. I think our thought on not requiring you to have put some skin in the game is that whether or not you've contributed, we'd like to see you be able to take advantage of that benefit. If the employee has need, we want to be able to help them out even if they haven't contributed in the past. We don't want to, I guess, freeze them out just because of that. I hope a lot of employees do participate, but again, we don't want to keep that benefit from somebody just because for whatever reason they didn't. Another reason I think we have that in right now is, like in our current situation, we have an employee who has need now. They don't have time to contribute to the bank. That's just a situation that they're in. The 1 year, I think Megan looked at some past policies, some other policies and tried to see kind of what the establishment was. Feel like we'd at least want to have 6 months in so that somebody was past probation before we did it. So I think from what she looked at from past policies, a year must have been kind of what she was seeing as a common theme for time frame. And the 960, I wanted to point that out specifically because I thought that could be an issue with some people. I am one of the 2 employees, and so for me, it's nice to see that the time I should be accruing is maybe being used somewhere. So, but I did think there might be people that shared that opinion that you have, so.
Yeah, like overall, I don't have an issue with it. I think it's really, really nice and noble that the staff want to be able to help each other out. These policies exist in a lot of different places, from college campuses to village settings to other special districts. Overall, again, no big issue. Those are just a couple questions and thoughts. So I think it's a nice effort on the staff's part to get something together and get rolling.
Director Zoffel, I had just a clarification. There was something in there along the lines, if somebody is out, if they're out on some kind of leave at this point, they're not able to then donate time.
Right, because if you're not, usually if
Is
you're
that
out on
over
the
that April time period that you're talking about? So like if somebody took a leave or, I'm not getting that part, I'm missing that part.
right.
Can you just
If
explain?
you're on a leave of absence, you're not accruing time, and so we wouldn't have you donating time. I'm trying to think of the time I've been here. It's not a situation we've had occur very large number of times, if at all. I think if somebody's on a leave of absence and they're not accruing time, then we wouldn't include them in the, like, being able to donate.
Okay, thank you.
So is the time accrued at a given hourly rate? Or
No, it's just hours,
it's just hours?
yes.
So how is I guess that'll play out. It's just kind of like along Doug's line of questioning, the financial liability to the village is a little based on whose hours are being used by what employee who's requesting that sick bank that it's allotted to.
Yeah, the cost will come
12
when,
weeks for a department head is quite a bit different than 12 weeks
yes,
for some of our other staff in
Yes.
terms of just a pure dollars stand.
yep, yeah, the cost will come in when somebody uses the time based on what their wages are.
So we're comfortable then that will most likely balance. So, your hours thrown into the sick bank used by another employee at a lower hourly rate actually is cost savings to the district while providing some benefit to that employee.
Right.
We believe that will be a kind of a see how it goes balancing act, more or less.
I think that's what we're hoping, yes, more or less. There'll be some where it's a gain and some where it's a loss, and then over the long haul, it'll balance out.
I'm with Tom about the banking, the additional 960 hours. It feels like we're kind of double dipping there. We have a policy in place to limit our exposure, but we're really not limiting our exposure anymore. We're just putting it into a different pot. Whether we let the employee keep it or we put it into the fund, we're still extending our exposure. And I thought when we put that policy in place, it was to limit our exposure.
You are correct, and yeah, if that's a part of the policy the board wants to change, we can do that. Like I said, we're just trying to use that time that's being lost by those employees now and helping seed the pot, but that's, this is a policy decision which falls in the board's bailiwick, so.
Well, I think there is potential and opportunity to kind of reverse that, and we could choose to seed that pot with 20 hours or 40 hours or 60 hours or 100 hours of time right now, and
True.
not then expose that should we end up with a whole bunch of long-term employees 5 years from now throwing that extra every year. You know what I mean? So that could be an option for us too at this point, is to just seed the pot up front.
Yep.
Knowing with what we have, start it with whatever would be a recommendation from you or Megan in terms of 40 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours, whatever it is, just so that you start with that benefit bank to work from.
That's what I was
on
going
the
to say.
hook moving forward.
Yep. That is certainly another way to go about it.
If your pot is empty, there's nothing to take from it. We've got to do something to at least put something in the pot so it's usable.
Well, yeah, but I kind of like Tom's suggestion. I know they did this at the school district a couple years ago, where you had to opt in. You had to essentially buy into the program that you wanted to be part of this, and it was a one-time only. You're either in or you're out. I'm not saying that we need to do that, but I would hope and I would like to see our staff kind of invest in this themselves, and we can seed it one time for a certain amount. But not annually with, folks that have hit the cap. I think we pull that out, but we seed it with some, marginal amount and encourage staff to participate. Oh, and I think we should lower the 1 year threshold down to probation. That seems to be more status quo, more of a logical timeline. Once you're essentially a full-time employee, you're equal to everybody else to submit.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we'll change the 1 year to 6 months. We'll take out the provision that says if you're at the 960 cap, what you're not accruing goes in. And then we'll do a one-time seed from the board, from the village, basically. Okay.
How much is that one-time seed going to be?
I was going to say, would 4 weeks be acceptable?
That's what, 160 hours?
That would be 4 weeks, yes.
That's fine. Either 160, 200, somewhere in that range. I'm fine with that.
Because we'll open it up then to employees to donate also, so.
Jeff, was there I read this earlier today. Was there a limit on how much an employee can receive from this?
Yes, the maximum employee could receive would be 480 hours or 12 weeks in a rolling 12-month period, and no more than 960 hours over a 5-year period.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Jeff, is that rolling period, and is that typical of the other programs that you guys have looked at?
I asked Megan, and she said that's where she came up with that, and with the limits of the 480 and the 960 was from looking at other policies.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else? Denny, Dan?
No.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, perfect. How does the board feel? Do you want to see the revised policy at a future meeting, or do you just want to approve it based on the changes we've talked about tonight?
Prove it, get it going.
Yeah. All right.
If there's someone that's in need of it, let's just go ahead and approve it with the changes.
So that sounded like a motion and a second by Teresa.
That sounds right.
All right, go ahead, Penny.
That first again was,
Betzinger?
thank you. Trustee Betzinger,
Yeah.
trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
trustee Marisak,
Yes.
trustee Guyer,
Yes.
trustee Spurling,
Yes.
and trustee Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Megan, for putting this together. All right, moving on. Item C this evening, we have the agreement between the Village of Montgomery and the Metropolitan Alliance of Police. Chief Smith?
Thank you, Mr. President. You all know that in 3 days, the agreement between the Metropolitan Alliance of Police, Chapter 3333, and the village expires. Over the last 6 months, we've been able to reach certain agreements. The big ones we can talk about is, number one, this is going to be a 5-year agreement. We sat down and discussed that. We were going from a 4-year to a 5 agreement. So this will actually go through April 30th of 2025. The range increase for salary increases are raised 13% over the length of the contract, 2.5% for the first 4 years, 3% in the last year. Comp time accrual, we got them to agree to capping the comp time accrual to 80 hours. Before it was refillable. As soon as they would use their time, they're able to refill it. We got to cap that. We increased their FTO pay from $2 to $3 an hour to fall in line with our officer in charge pay. The officers receive 2 extra days a year for personal days. They were receiving 1, so now they'll have 2. They're going to fall in line with the rest of the village in the sick time buyout at retirement or upon retirement. They can buy out up to 320 hours. We lifted the restriction on residency requirement within 20 miles, and we changed quite a bit of the other language that we wanted to change as the village to the contract. I ask that you guys go ahead and approve the agreement, and we'll move forward for the next 5 years.
Thanks, Chief. Any comments or questions from the board?
Thank you for
Chief,
getting
getting that done. Move to approve.
Second.
Go ahead.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger,
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
and Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
I would like,
That carries 6-0. Thank you.
if I can, Matt, I would like to thank the chief and Megan and the officers for the hard work they put in together to make that happen. It's about the easiest process we've had in my time here, so.
Absolutely. All right, and thanks, Chief, appreciate it. So I'm going to move on to item D. I'd also like to welcome Morgan to the board meeting. Item D this evening is Pizzo and Associates Basin Stewardship Contract Extension. Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. President. So before the board tonight would be an extension for Pizzo and Associates to perform the basin stewardship, prescribed burns, selective wildlife, forestry. They have been basically performing this work for several years throughout the village. We are recommending that we move forward with extending to a 1-year contract to Pizzo. We would like to, our anticipation would be to put this out to bid this fall for the following year. The idea behind that is that we can have different contractors be able to view these basins when they're in their current growing state instead of in a dormant state to get a better idea. And we feel that the village will get better pricing and better cooperation from different contractors. But at this point in time, this contract does expire. So we'd like to move forward to carry us through this season's worth of work with Pizzo, which we have been very happy with in the past and have no real complaints about. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
All right. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
Trustee Marisak, Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
thank you. Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yes.
and Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and that carries. Thank you. And Mark, I was going to ask, I know in the past we've had a summary table of what we've spent on these basins. year over year, not what we budgeted, but what we actually have spent over the last, let's say, 5 years. I think that would be interesting information to have long term, because as we were told 10 years ago that the cost to maintain would level off at some amount in the future, and I think we're there in some of the basins, and we're certainly working on that in some of our like in Balmaray. I don't think we're obviously not there yet. So at any rate, if you can have them put that together, just get information to have go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I didn't mention is that they are going to continue this 1-year extension at a no cost increase. So they'll maintain the cost that they did in FY20. And that cost was reduced from the previous year before. So.
Okay. All right. So moving on, I wanted to see what the board feels. Item E is the Montgomery Development Fund Program amendment and the DCEO grant program. This really should have been on items for discussion. We can talk about it now, but there's nothing really to vote on. But we'll kind of go through that during that conversation. So let's leave it where it is. Let's talk about it now, but we won't. There's no board action tonight. So with that, Director Young, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we all know, small businesses are suffering right now, and in an effort to help them get through this unprecedented time, staff was looking at a couple of different options that we wanted to review with the board tonight and hopefully get your endorsement of moving forward. The first would be an expansion of the Montgomery Development Fund program. As you're well aware, we have a forgivable loan portion to the Montgomery Development Fund and also a low interest loan portion of the Montgomery Development Fund that we put into place a few years ago with CDBG funds that were released to the village. With that, we have reserves that we could look at a third program, which would grant up to $5,000 for an individual business and have an application and a review by the MDF loan committee that would then come to the village board for action. I'll go through the basic requirements of that in a minute. The second program that we're looking at, and I want to thank Shar and Justin for helping me to look at what is an option from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. There's a newly created program called the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Program, and this is in direct response to the COVID-19 virus situation that many small businesses face. This would be a program that would allow for up to 60 days of very variable working capital, working capital to be granted up to $25,000 that would be backed by CDBG funds from the state. The village would administer this program. These individual businesses would not make application to the state. They'd make application through the village. And in your cover sheet, it identifies that businesses for this program would have to have at least one full-time employee, but no more than 50 employees total. There are specific requirements that call for these would be assistance to businesses that are labeled as non-essential. They could include essential components to their businesses, but essentially they're non-essential business activities. There would be, we would recommend, and the state recommends that there would, we would not have these grant opportunities for individual contractors, franchise or chain businesses, cannabis or medical cannabis, recreational or medical cannabis related businesses, private clubs, or businesses that limit membership by reason of other capacity other than capacity, businesses that derive at least 33% from gambling activities, unless it was otherwise approved by the village, businesses that would be engaged in the manufacturing or sales of tobacco products, vaping, liquor, or other types of businesses, including firearms, liquor stores, adult bookstores, pawn shops, storage facilities, trailer storage yards or junkyards, businesses that, excuse me, are not related to, I'm sorry, a business in which a majority owner of the business is, or an immediate family member is an elected official of a local unit of government, and then anything that would be similar to that. So it does open it up for mom and pop type retail establishments. It would allow for restaurants to apply for this type of grant, either one of these two types of grants. So again, two programs. We're looking for basically an endorsement to go forward with an application to the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Program. And then second, moving forward with taking applications now for up to a $5,000 grant for the Montgomery Development Fund program portion. We could take applications and then process the actual approval of a resolution to go forward on that at a later meeting, but start to take applications so that we could get folks underway with that program. A couple other points. In the cover letter, I recommended that there be no chain or franchises up to with up to 15. If you had 15 chain or franchise locations, I think we should maybe modify that recommendation to say no more than 5 within the state of Illinois. I think that would make it cleaner for some of our local mom and pop type restaurants that maybe had more than one location, but within the state of Illinois. Couple points of discussion, at least in terms of the Montgomery Development Fund portion. What would we want to place in terms of a cap, in terms of the amount of money that would be available out of our program? We should talk about that. And I just should also state that because we're in 2 counties for the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Program, we are not part of Kane County's CDBG program. Usually in the more urban counties, municipalities can opt in or opt out of participating in the CDBG funding that comes through the state. We have opted out of that, so I believe that we can, since Kane County is considered an urban county, it wouldn't be able to participate in the Downstate program. We're going to look at whether or not we can participate in that individually because we are not part of Kane County's program. With regards to Kendall County, there's an intergovernmental agreement in the works where Kane County would back these grants if someone foreclosed or closed business within the first 60 days after receiving the grant. It's possible that the state could ask for the funds to be refunded, where the village would be on the hook for that. The intergovernmental agreement with Kane County that's being worked up would actually back that refund request with dollars. So a couple things to still be flushed out and come down the pike on this, but that's a basic summary of 2 ideas that we have in terms of trying to support small business.
All right, thank you. Just a couple points, and then I'm sure board members have questions. One, would like to give credit to Trustee Geyer, who called me last week and suggested the MDF program like this, and kind of implored staff to develop some sort of a program that would help small businesses. So I appreciate his leadership on that. And then I know that the EDC and SHAR has been helpful with investigating the Downstate program, or both programs. So I do want to give credit to the EDC for helping with this. I think for purposes of conversation, I'm sure that board members have a lot of questions. I would like to just bifurcate it a little bit. The downstate small business stabilization program, if we can kind of just cover that quickly, and whether or not we want to pursue that. I don't think there's nothing we can change in their program. We either want our businesses to be able to apply or we don't. If there are questions specific to that, let's get those out of the way and then move on to the other portion.
I have a question related to the businesses that are specifically ineligible for assistance. Is that list predicated by the DCEO program?
Yes. Yes. It's essentially, it follows with the governor's order on essential versus non-essential businesses.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, I know there's some clarification on the downstate portion, but let's obviously get on that. If there's businesses that want to take part, then we can look into, staff will look into that and make that application on their behalf or however it works.
And that's ensuring that the village is not on the hook for repayment of those loans, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I would just state that we would not be on the hook if it was in if it was in Kendall County and we participated in the intergovernmental agreement with Kane County, then my understanding is that the village would not be on the hook. If we are able to participate for our Kane County businesses, it's very likely that we could be on the hook. We don't think that the state will call them in, but it is a possibility that they would call for those to be refunded.
See, that throws up a gigantic red flag. Any money coming from the state or backed by the state right now, quite frankly, is awfully suspect when it comes to grant programs and loan programs.
Understood.
Extending the village's liability in terms of those kinds of dollars, I have serious concerns about.
Understood. And honestly, we have to establish whether or not we can actually participate for businesses that are in Kane County. So we'd have to come back to you before we could even suggest that that's a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Well,
Yeah, real
concerned with the, go ahead, Danny.
Rich, you mentioned something about franchisees, and yet you're looking at smaller guys. I mean, I know like Grandma's Table's small, but say the Dairy Queen is a national franchise, but it's still a local person running it, or something like that. Is that?
We would suggest,
that's not eligible, or is it?
Denny, we would suggest that it would be eligible because individual franchisees
Okay.
own national brands, let's say. So if they have less than 5 within the state of Illinois, we would say that they could make application.
If the franchisee has less than 5 in the state?
Pardon me?
If the franchisee has less than 5 in the state?
Correct.
Okay, not that there's only 5 franchises in the state. That individual owner.
That individual franchisee has only 5 of the chain stores or restaurants.
And how did you get to the 5? Is that a magic number or?
Well, it's something that we looked at, we know of. For instance, the gentleman before you tonight for the old Pizza Hut location, he identified that he was going to be participating in a group of 2 others, and this would be the 3rd one. We looked at, frankly, some of the ownership situations with the Dairy Queen and with Niners and that type of thing, and felt that we're really helping then a non-chain type of representative if we're looking at a true, local mom and pop operation, if you will.
Yeah. So I didn't think about this until we're talking about it now. If I'm a McDonald's, no offense to the McDonald's franchisees that generally make a substantial profit every year. If I owned 5 McDonald's in Illinois, I wouldn't want them to be eligible for our $5,000 because, frankly, I think that they would be too big.
Well, we could tighten that up. I mean, we could say, 2 or 3, I guess. We could look at that and see who it might affect. Shar and I were just talking about the Burger King franchisee. I believe that the Burger King in town, that's his only location, but we can verify that. It'd be that type of person that I think we'd want to try to help versus somebody that has 10 McDonald's.
Yeah, and I guess I should say, if I owned 5 McDonald's, let's say, I'm probably not going to apply for the 5,000. I'm running a business, and frankly, I'm very busy right now. So maybe we just don't get the applications from those kinds of folks. But that would be, that would be one of my questions. What else you got, board?
That was my concern was, and Rich answered it, was the not allowing franchise, but it's franchisees. It's not that it's part of a franchise. There's no more than 5 owned by that franchise. So I'm good with it.
I'm fine with that.
I would like to see a sunset on this, honestly, a very short window of applications. I don't know what that time frame to be, but don't you think that we limit our exposure if we time it out?
Yes.
We've talked about that as well, and there's 2 different ways to effectively address that. One would definitely be a sunset. I think it's harder for us, honestly, to set a sunset with the condition we're in now. I mean, we don't know exactly how long these types of operations are going to have to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say it's going to be throughout the rest of this year. So, yes, in one sense, I can see setting a sunset. The other would be essentially you would set a sunset if you created a maximum program dollar amount within the MDF fund. Say $100,000 or $200,000 maximum could be granted in these loans of up to 5,000. I honestly believe that we should be able to cover all of the applicants that would meet these qualifications from the businesses that are in town. So I can look at it 2 different ways, or impose both, either a time limit in terms of when you can make application, or a cap in the amount of MDF funds that could be part of the program.
I mean, if you want to set a time, sunset, I mean, you can always come back and revisit it. If you want to say, now we're looking to start this program, you could go May, June, July, and say by July 31st. If you get to that point and things are still a situation where we think it's needed, the board can always extend the sunset.
Sure.
What kind of a
requirement for how long an applicant has to be in business in Montgomery before they're eligible?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. The state program for the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Program, you have to be in business for at least 3 years prior to making application. I think that as we look at it, I would like to propose, at least for the MDF portion, that we state that you need to have been in business for at least 1 year prior to application.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would prefer the 1 year myself too.
What kind of a fund balance do we have, Rich? I mean, if we did 80 if we capped it at 80, that would be $400,000.
I don't know if I don't believe that we need to take it up to 400,000. I don't believe that we're going to have that kind of response in applications. I'd really look to the board and Justin and Jeff, frankly, and I have not discussed a cap. So rather than just throw out a number, I think that we should discuss that further of how much of the MDF funds we want to donate, or not donate, but designate to this program.
Well, and before we kind of get ahead of ourselves tonight, that cap, I mean, we can talk about it a little bit here today, but we're going to be approving the program in 2 weeks, amending the MDF to do something like this. So we can institute that cap at that time, and maybe we'll see what kind of applicants we've gotten. But I think, or we just pick 200,000 now. If there's a huge demand from our businesses that need this in the short term, then we can revisit that in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and go from there.
How will we communicate this out to these businesses?
We're going to get it out on our webpage, and Shar has great connections with the local businesses that might be willing to participate in or looking to participate in. So we'll get the word out on Facebook, on our webpage.
We've also established a list of business emails during this time that we would send it out to those emails directly.
Right? That, again, they can't take advantage of it if they don't know about it. So getting it out to them is important.
Yeah,
I would say.
What is the balance in that fund right now, please?
800,000.
It's Justin can answer that, but it's over 800,000.
I would say you'd have at least 10 people just in the Montgomery Road area that would go after some of that money.
And kind of along those lines, is there a requirement, and I feel like there ought to be, I know that this is a grant and not a forgivable loan, but I liked the hook that was in the forgivable loan that, if you applied for this and we help you out, and the $5,000 is really meant for you keeping folks employed, paying your mortgage payment if you're non-essential and you're closed, those kinds of critical functions. But if you close a week after we give you, a grant from this fund, then there ought to be some sort of clawback, because then you just gamed the system, frankly. Is there any way that we can, put that hook in there where they're required to, stay in business?
I think that could definitely be worked into the program. The challenge will be many of these businesses are closed now. So how do we determine that you've closed up shop for good versus being temporarily closed because of the virus?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think it's something we can certainly explore. We just have to think about it a little more as to how we'd want to implement it. But I think the point is a good one, and it's definitely something that we could try to work in.
Yeah, I'd like to see some kind of mechanism for that, and I would be more comfortable if we initially started with a cap to that program. Now, that doesn't mean you can't come back and extend it if the demand is overwhelming or more than we would expect. But I would feel more comfortable if Rich and Justin and Jeff could give us a recommended dollar amount to start that program with. And should we see the applications just flood in and need to go to 200,000 or whatever that secondary step is, have the board have the ability to then make that grant funding available and increase that top end.
And please keep in mind, we don't want to exhaust all the funds in the MDF program just with this portion of a potential program. We have two other well-established, as you're aware, with the low-interest loan fund and the forgivable loan fund up to $10,000 that we have done. And staff, prior to COVID-19, we were prepared to bring to you another program, which we talked about before at Committee of the Whole, I believe in February, which was to be a stimulant to the Montgomery downtown, the Mill District, where we were talking about restaurants and the like, and some significant dollars out of the Montgomery Development Fund program to go into establishing those types of establishments. So we don't want to completely deplete all the funds just within this one program. So I believe Trustee Betzinger is very correct that we can look at this in stages. If there's high demand, then maybe we look at adjustment to the recommended cap. But as of now, we don't want to deplete the entire fund.
And one other hook that I would mention is when we move forward with this, we're going to right, as soon as tomorrow, probably start advertising this to our businesses. Those applications, just like the regular MDF program, would come into Village Hall. They would be reviewed by staff. They would set up a Zoom meeting with our MDF committee.
Yes.
Who would then need to approve these grant applications. And so I think that is a little bit of a check on the process. It's not just $5,000 checks to anybody that sends them in. It's, you know, do you meet these qualifications that we've set? And then hopefully staff and the committee can review these quickly and get them to the board in, you know, shortly after that, so we can approve and get checks to people that need them right now.
That would be the goal, yes.
Okay.
Can we, again, just clarification, I'm not remembering correctly. With the two current programs with the MDF, the requirements are they have to be in business for 3 years prior, correct?
No, 3 years after. You have to maintain your business for at least 3 years after you've received either the low interest loan or the forgivable grant.
And there's nothing for how long they've been in business prior to that.
They have to, no, there isn't any specific requirement on how long they've been in business beforehand, but they have to demonstrate good business practices and show their business model to the committee. But there is no specific requirement on how long they have been established as a business.
Okay.
And they have to provide financials.
They have to provide the financials of what they've done in the past, but there's no specific number of years that they have to have been in business.
Okay. I need to think about that a little more about this other thing we're talking about.
Well, the reason I think we put the 1 year in place and the state put 3 years in place is because you don't want, or I don't think we should be supporting startups with this cash infusion when people are trying to, you know, keep folks employed and not keep the doors open, but keep their business intact while they get through this crisis. So this $5,000 is not intended to be a startup situation.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. Like, I just was thinking in my head, I'd be much more comfortable if it was like they had to be in business for 3 years, and then after they got the 5,000, they had to be in business for at least a year, because we just don't know how hard this would hit them.
But if you do that, if you say, okay, if you want this $5,000, and $5,000 for a business, it's not really a whole lot of anything.
Right.
But, if you want to do and say they got to be in business for 3 years, what about the businesses, the small businesses that have started in Montgomery that may be struggling, that haven't been in business for 3 years? We don't want to lose those. So I would say at most, lower it down to about a year. So it is not a startup. Typically, if you're not making money within 3 years as a business, you're out of business anyway. But you can't cut the head off. Okay, you have to be in business for 3 years, because then making those businesses that are just starting to bloom, and you're not even giving them an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. I think of the Douglas Road Corridor. We spent a lot of time and effort getting people to move on into those units there, and a lot of them are below 3 years. I would hate to put those folks in a position where we would lose them.
Yeah, totally. And I think one comment that I'll make is, I think that staff has always been pretty good at understanding the intent behind, you know, what we're talking about here. And so we'll approve these requirements. But if one of our businesses comes in, you know, our small businesses are very important to us, that doesn't quite meet the requirements here, they'll vet that and serve that up to the board for a conversation. If there's a business that, you know, opened up 9 months ago that just doesn't quite meet that, I mean, we're picking a year because, you know, we think we know we don't have a crystal ball. So if this program needs to morph in a way that helps our small businesses stay open, I think, you know, we would benefit from that. And frankly, in Montgomery, we're more nimble. We're nimble enough to do something like that. And so I'm comfortable doing our best here today and then modifying it as we get applicants so we can ensure that our businesses, you know, get the funding that they need during this time.
Right, yeah, I get that. I mean, that's the whole goal, is to keep the people in business, so.
And these are Montgomery businesses, right? So the food trucks, those don't qualify because they're not Montgomery-based businesses.
Unless the food truck business was based out of Montgomery.
Yes, like that was their mailing address.
Right. It would have to have a Montgomery business address, yes.
Okay. Not that I'm against the food trucks. I love them.
Yeah. All right. So we need to talk about a limit for this program, so you can put that. What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, 50 businesses would be 250,000. I think we have about that many small businesses.
I'm at 20 to start. You can always expand it, but it'll help. If you know that there's only 20, it may push some people to get the application done so that they can get in.
Well, and it's up to 5,000. It's not 5,000 for everybody. So you're talking 100,000 earmark from the fund today, and we'll address it if it needs to be increased. Is that what you're saying, Doug?
Well,
Yes.
that's what I didn't mean Montgomery Road when I said earlier. I'm talking about Douglas, like Dan was saying. I mean, you got that, and then you got a lot of restaurants, right? The two Burger Kings we have in Montgomery, both are separate franchisees.
Yeah.
So you got them also on Montgomery Road too. But Douglas is our main, we got a lot of them.
I'm okay with the 20, knowing that full well if it goes over to start partaking, if we've got to increase it, we can easily increase it.
And again, correction for my misspeaking, Matt. Yeah, I'm talking about $100,000. It could be 40 if everyone took 2,500.
Yeah. Yep. And just worth mentioning, we've talked a lot about the restaurants in town specifically, but just wanted to call attention to the doctor's offices and dental offices and all of those that are legitimately closed. There is nothing, unless it's
practice, dentists.
Then they're making mortgage payments, and so I think we'll get some good applications from those folks. And I mean, it's in our best interest to do everything we can do with the funds, like we did with the water credits, to keep folks in their business or in their home and kind of bridge the gap here. So I appreciate the board and staff on this. Does anybody have anything else? Or Rich, do you need any other clarification?
Thank you guys all for working
on the application a little bit. So you guys are going to be opening up the window for applications as soon as tomorrow, if you can, and we'll approve the program in 2 weeks. So is there anything else that you need from us before you get started?
No, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, as you said, Matt, what we'll do is, based on the changes tonight with the $100,000 cap and only having to have been in business for 12 months as opposed to 3 years, we'll start advertising the program tomorrow through the different avenues we have. We also work on the text changes to the MDF program. At our next meeting, we'll bring those text changes back to you to approve and any applications that have made it through the process in the meantime.
Yeah. Perfect. Anything else on this topic from the board or staff?
No, thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. So we're not voting on that this evening. So we're going to move on to item F this evening, Resolution 2020-09, authorizing the execution of an IGA with Kendall County. It's a funding grant for the construction of the multi-use path sidewalks along US Route 30 and the Virgil Gilman Trail. With that, I think Attorney Julian is covering this.
Yes. and you pretty much covered it in the description. Intergovernmental agreement that is for a grant from the Kendall County Transportation, I don't remember the acronym, the KCTAP program. And basically it's up to $75,000 or half of the cost, whichever less. Typically the grant amount is capped at $50,000, but because of the importance of the project and where the connectivity will occur, they have decided to increase it an extra $25,000 if needed by the village. So yeah, this is just a formality for us to enter the agreement to get those funds.
All right, any questions?
Timeline on construction of that project.
We're to Engineer Wallers on that.
Yeah, thank you. So right now we're trying to delineate center line, and it's likely that we'll have some wetlands in the path of the proposed path. So we're trying to determine if we can move it outside the wetlands or if we'll have to go through wetland determination. But our intention is to try to bid this project later this year. But it may be delayed. If we have to go through delineation, it might be delayed until next year before we would start. But the agreement does provide for a significant amount of time to allow us the flexibility to continue to move forward and recognizing that there might be some permitting issues that we have to work through.
Just a second, all. Did anyone else lose connection? Or was it just me?
It was just you.
All right.
I think Jeff has the ability to hang up on you if he needs to.
Engineer Wallers, is that dollar amount for that path? Is that asphalt 8 foot? Is that crushed lime? What's the process project scope there?
Yes. So it's a 10-foot wide path, bituminous surface with a limestone base.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? I'm trying to scroll through this. I feel it's worth mentioning that I really do enjoy working with our friends in Kendall County on programs like this or anything. They've really been awesome to deal with over the years. That's saying nothing about anybody else in any other jurisdiction, but I do appreciate their willingness to kind of work with us to achieve these kind of things. So thank you. If there's no other comments from the board, in a motion to approve.
Second.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Could you please repeat the first?
Motion to approve, trustee Marisak?
Thank you, trustee Marisak. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
And trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, item G this evening is Resolution 2020-008, adopting an investment policy. Director Van Voorn.
Thank you, President Brawley. With the general public's perception on environmental, social, governance factors changing in the recent past, the state of Illinois took a very clear stance and passed the Sustainable Investing Act. I won't read the exact policy itself, but the act has what we need to include in our investment policy is included right in the act. It was actually effective 1/1 of 2020. But we're just now getting to this, so if there's any questions, I can certainly answer those at this time.
Has this impacted us on any of our investments, or have we been kind of in line with this to begin with?
we're in line with this to begin with.
I thought so. Thank you.
All right, any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Teresa, did your dog bark right when you voted? Awesome. Let's work at home.
I thought
All right.
your voice changed.
All right, thank you. That carries 6-0. All right, moving on to item H this evening, we have a PSA with EEI for the Jackson Street sanitary improvements. This is a construction engineering amount in the amount of $133,916. Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. President. Basically the Jackson Street sanitary has been something that has been an issue for several years. The sanitary sewer line has a lot of sags and bellies in it, so we put this project out to bid, and a company by the name of LUC Group was awarded the contract lowest bidder. So this PSA would be for the construction engineering for this portion of the project to EEI, so we're recommending that to the board tonight for approval. If there's any questions, I can certainly answer those.
Mayor, can I just interject? The contract amount is actually $21,096 for the construction engineering. The total project cost is $133,916. So sorry for the confusion. I'm not sure how that happened, but anyway, just to make sure that's clear.
All right. Up the actual contract here. Okay. Mark, were you done? Do you have anything else?
No, not unless there's any questions for me.
They have not started to work on that project yet?
I'm sorry, what was that, Denny?
Have they not started work on that?
No, we have
project?
we have our pre-construction meetings scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll have a better timeline on when construction will start after that meeting.
All right. Any other questions? So if we approve this tonight, EEI can make sure to be there too.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and just for clarification, the contract amount is $21,096.
Correct.
And, all right, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any call roll?
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak? I couldn't hear you. Trustee Marisak?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
Thank you.
Doug, you got to get your hair cut. That hair is making your brain go do strange things.
Oh, I lost my internet connection for a second.
You need bald is beautiful, man.
If you want to call,
Unfortunately, it's on top of that thing. Your face.
all right, let's move on. Item I this evening is change order number 1 for the lead service line replacement project. This is a request for time extension. I think Engineer Wallers is going to summarize.
Thank you, President Brawley. So I think everybody knows the lead service line replacement program started, and due to weather, cold weather, they did shut down with the intent to start back up this spring. Due to the shelter-in-place order, the contractor is really not able to continue the project. So they have requested a time extension to the project. We are recommending the approval of that time extension. There's no change in contract price. It would be a 126-day calendar extension. The original contract completion date was June 26th. This would take it out to October 30th. That still gives us enough time to do any asphalt work with that completion time. We're trying to, as I think all of us know, there's no way to really understand what will happen in the next few months, but we wanted to give the contractor as much time as we could to move the project forward. So we're requesting the extension, and then just as a point of information, this change order, once approved by the board, will go to IEPA for approval as well. So there's a two-step process for approval in this case because of the forgivable loan that we're getting. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Engineer Wallers, that was my concern. Could that affect the money that is coming from the state to fund this?
No, once they approve a change order, then that just becomes part of the contract. We do have a loan agreement with them, and this would not alter the payment stream or anything else, just the time extension of the contract.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? And I think-
Just one quick thing. Knowing that project is relying on some state funding, we comfortable if the state decides to pull that funding?
Yeah, the funding in this case is the revolving loan fund that is already, money's in place of it. It's merged with federal monies that have been leveraged from the federal programs. I guess I couldn't say it's not impossible, but it would be very difficult for the state to utilize that money for general state operations because it is tied to and specific to the completion of sanitary and water main projects. So I'm confident that we will get this money, especially since we have a grant agreement with the state to provide that funding to us.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, I have some caution and concern. We saw it in 2008 and then we saw it in 2014 where the state had issued quite a few grants in millions of dollars. And then towards the end of the year, just sorry, can't cut the check. Which obviously right now, this fall, the situation of the state budget obviously is going to be pretty precarious. So I just want to make sure as a village, relying on state dollars at this point, while hopefully we'll come through and be fine, we need to be prepared if we're entering into those type of contracts that we have the ability to deal with that situation should it arise.
Absolutely. All right, anything else? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
trustee Spurling,
Yes.
trustee Lee,
Yes.
trustee Betzinger,
Yes.
trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
and trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that carries. Thanks, Pete. All right, moving on to a couple items for discussion. We did the item A, the liquor license request previously, so thank you. Item B this evening is the status of community events for 2020. I know Administrator Zolfel is going to kind of walk through the memo on this. Just briefly, the goal, or at least my goal for having this conversation now with the board is to, at the end of this, ensure that our staff has clear direction on what they're either going to be working on with regards to these events, or which ones are moving, or which ones are paused. And so with that, Mr. Zolfel, if you want to take it away.
Thank you. This is something staff's been talking about, on an ongoing basis throughout all this. To date, we have postponed all of the May and June events. That would include one that's not listed on your item, which is the community garage sale. Would normally have taken place in May. So we've postponed that for now, and we will look at that again in the fall and see if it's feasible at that time. The inaugural food truck festival was scheduled for June 13th. We have postponed that, talked to the organizer of that, and currently have September 13th as a backup date for now. And the other May-June item would have been the concerts in the park. That is a Fox Valley Park District program. We did reach out to them, and they have canceled the June events and may look to reschedule them later. Our other events that we have in 2020 then would be Montgomery Fest, the River Run, and the tree lighting. Some of the concerns that's come up with staff is that even once the stay-at-home order has been lifted, we feel it's very likely that there will be some social distancing rules still in place, which could make some of the events difficult to hold. I'm also trying to maintain a clean environment, whether you're looking at shared tables for eating food, porta potties, whatever it is, trying to maintain that environment. Sponsorships are relied on for some of those events. We obviously don't feel that we can be out seeking sponsorships from businesses at this time. And then our other concerns, even if we find a way that we feel we can hold the events, concerns over what attendance will be, just based on, any concerns the general public may have about gatherings. So those are really the topics we've been talking about. Just wanted to update you on what we've done with the May and June events, and then just, like Matt said, start the discussion on thoughts about going forward, what we should be working on, what we should be pausing, what we want to do. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
I understand May and June events. I'm not willing to discuss postponing or canceling Montgomery Fest at this point. I think it's premature. I don't. No one knows what this virus, and actually, I think this virus actually is a lot more people have had it than what they really think. I think this virus was around probably earlier than anyone knew. But it'll be interesting to see what this virus, how it reacts to the warmer weather and the heat of the summer. It may begin to die down. We may have other issues. If we postpone things into later in the year, we may, if there's a resurgence of this virus, we may have issues because we rescheduled to a time when the coronavirus is actually on its uptick again. So at least for August, the Montgomery Fest, the River Run, and for the tree lighting ceremony, it's still too early for me.
I did reach out and speak to a couple of our food vendors just to kind of get a feel for where they're at and what they see out there, because obviously this is what they do. And both of the vendors that I spoke with, which was Genoa and Cruisin' Concessions, which is a corn dog guy, both indicated that most of their Junes have been rescheduled, but the July ones have typically not been rescheduled at this point, and they're planning on moving forward. In fact, some of the ones that they do in Chicago, they've even have plans and contingencies in place to move them to the suburbs, as opposed to canceling or changing dates out. So I just wanted to try to get a little feel for where they're at in case they were just came out and flat out said, yeah, we're out this year. We're not doing it. And none of them have said that. They've said, again, it's early for August, the summertime, the heat related to the virus. But again, the other concerns aren't necessarily about that. It's the sponsorship, the cleaning, portalets, and what does the attendance look like? Because without the sponsorships, we have a problem with paying for them.
I have a concern about, I'm sorry, Doug, were you done?
Yeah, you're good.
I have a concern about the commitments we have out there for the bands. Is there any, I'm just trying to think, are there any other commitments? So we have our contract for the fireworks, for the carnival. If we say, yes, we're going to do it, and we get to a point where we can't have it, are we still on the hook for paying out all those commitments?
We have pulled the contracts and reviewing them, and are trying to figure out just what our cancellation clauses are, what we, are starting to work on negotiating, depending on if we have to cancel. So we are currently working on that to see just what our liability would be.
I think it's probably, I would be interested to see what those numbers would look like, or an idea of what those numbers would look like. I did just recently see something on the news, I believe it was Orland Park, They ended up canceling their large annual, whatever it's called, for that reason. If they went forward with it, they were going to be on the hook for something like $200,000. Now, clearly, we're not in that boat with our expenses for Montgomery Fest, but with canceling it, they were able to save a pretty significant amount. They still were going to be responsible for a smaller amount. So I just would like to have an idea of the numbers of where we would be at if we were in that situation.
Yeah, like I said, we're working on that. Hopefully we could have information to the board maybe for the update. We'll say we looked at these, because we're renting a stage this year. We have put on a deposit. That company has said they would, if we want to use them next year, they would just put the deposit towards that, towards next year's rental. The carnival, we do not have an issue with, and we're still, like I said, we're still looking into the bands and the fireworks. But as we get that information, we'll pass it along.
I know South Elgin just canceled theirs, I think, today or over the weekend. I have a coworker that band plays, and what they offered to the band was that they were first in line for next year as a kind of a carrot to dangle in front of them relating to canceling, that they were just going to kind of rebook them right away for next year then. So just to mention that.
Doug, which one canceled, Doug?
Riverfest in South Elgin.
Okay.
Yeah. They just canceled it. They didn't postpone it. Theirs is usually 2 weeks after ours, through the end of August.
Yeah. Hey, can we just hit pause just for 1 second? And
If I could interrupt, I apologize, but I'm going to interrupt the meeting. This is my new grandson, Cooper Joseph Ball.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Just had he wanted to take part in the meeting. He's definitely in favor of having Montgomery Fest. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations, Rich.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
that's awesome. All right. So I figured we're specifically honing in on Montgomery Fest, which is early August. I would recommend that. I know Steve mentioned June. Tom, maybe you can back me up on this. Are we in a position right now where June and July events that we were hosting, which would basically be the concerts in the park and the food truck festival, we need to cancel those, or what do we do?
The June would be
100% June's out.
Yeah.
Just don't consider June to be much of anything from an event standpoint.
Yeah, I mean,
July is suspect, and August is if we're lucky. A lot of the hand wringing right now is, well, what are we going to do about this, and what are we going to do about that, and how are we going to keep people 6 feet apart? In the next month, CDC is going to come out with some distancing guidelines for events, large gatherings. There's going to be caps on how many, whether that's 5,000 or 500 or 50, we don't know yet. And so if you can't control it, you don't spend all day going down 50 different paths of, well, we can move the picnic tables, and we can, in my opinion, Montgomery Fest being in August is beneficial for us, because we've got another 15 days or 30 days to make some of those decisions. Should we push that back, put a pause on it, or outright cancel it? I think staff's doing the appropriate thing, pulling the contract, seeing what financial obligations we currently have. I certainly wouldn't be making any more financial obligations and commitments to the festival until we have some more information. Each week it seems like we take some leap years ahead in terms of what's different, what's new, what the rules are, what's happening. I'd give it 15 days or 30 days before you actually make a decision on outright cancellation or pushing it a little bit further into the fall right now. But the June stuff absolutely is just out. July we'll be lucky, and we'll just we gotta still give it some time and see, in my opinion.
With that,
I think we could wait a month in May, easy. I think China has no new cases or no new deaths, and even Louisiana today had no new deaths. And maybe, like Steve said, maybe it's the heat, but they had no new deaths today. So that whole state. So I think we could wait another month and see what happens then.
Yeah. So maybe it makes sense for us to add this to, or I think I saw that we have an intergovernmental coming up. Maybe we have that in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks. And in that time, if staff can look at our risk, our liabilities out there for contracts with the Fest and the River Run. And outside of that simple task of looking at that, I would like the direction of the board to be, don't work on this stuff. Part of the reason why I wanted to bring this up today is that, we are in a state of emergency. Our staffs are split. We're running lean on things. We're running remotely. I don't want our staff to be focusing on something that like Tom said, is so uncertain right now. So if we can stomach waiting 4 weeks and talk about this at that time, and maybe we'll be closer to either pulling the plug on one of our big events this year, or we feel, and the CDC guidelines say that we can have those events, then we'll do that. But outside of that, I'd like to see our staff focusing on mission critical stuff at this time.
My only concern is the food vendors, to possibly send them out their letter, or I think it's usually an email from Debbie that that our plan is to continue to go forward at this time. As things develop, it may change. And we're just looking to try to get the commitment that they're going to be there or not be there. And no deposit or anything is required at this time, but we just want to communicate with them that our intention is that we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be having it, but we're going to continue to review as more information becomes available. Because again, those food vendors are getting calls for events that were in June that are pushing out to August, and they may opt to, with no communication from us and their fear that we may can't, they may reschedule and go somewhere else.
Well, and they may do that anyway if we're not requiring a deposit.
We usually the deposits don't come in until about a month before the event. But normally at this point in time, we're sending out a letter, just telling them and kind of getting their yes, we're coming, and then we pencil them in. And again, that's not a tremendous amount of staff time, because I'm not sure what mission critical stuff everyone is working on. I know we have some people that are working on mission critical stuff, but I'm not sure, we're talking about letters to 15 vendors.
Well, and unfortunately, we're forgetting about another component of this. We have the viral component, and we have the medical component, and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it seems like the Republicans and the Democrats are making into a political component now. So my fear is that the political component is going to be even bigger than the viral component.
Well, let's hope the political component doesn't kill anybody. That would be the main difference. But yeah, so I mean
I think there's a balance between don't do any more work for the Fest and go full steam like it's going to happen. I think there's a middle ground there. Some of the basics, a couple letters going out to food vendors or to crafters, just a touch point with the bands. At this point, we think it's going to happen. This big giant elephant of what if is out there, and how do we consume that? How do we deal with it? And it's one bite at a time. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. You take little bitty pieces and you just move forward. We don't know what the rules are. We don't spend the time working on 14 different layouts, because if it's 6 feet or 10 feet, you don't go down that path. But the real rudimentary basic, are you going to be there? Are you not? We'll figure a lineup in terms of where things are set later, if we're able to have the event, is probably what we should do. It's not 40 hours of work for staff to do a couple of those little things to position us, should we get good information, be able to move forward, where we can still have a fest. I'm not optimistic, but unless we're going to outright cancel it now, there still has to be, in my mind, a little bit of movement on some of those areas over the next couple weeks. Again, it's not a rush, where we still have some time, and there's still so much unknown. it's somewhere in between, I think, what Doug was saying and Matt. I think there's a little bit of progress should probably happen, but it's certainly not full bore. And don't expect sponsorships necessarily for the festival. That's what I'm hearing and seeing in some of the other event-y stuff happening in our area and looking to happen in the fall.
I would agree with that, Tom. The other thing I'm thinking too is if we remain optimistic that we will have a fest, maybe it's on a smaller scale this year. Maybe we just do it smaller than we normally would. Something for us to consider.
All right, Corinne, did you have anything else about any of these events that we didn't think about?
No, Mr. President. Thank you for the clarification.
So it sounds like a small amount of work over the next few weeks just to kind of shore up and ensure that some folks, that our folks will be there. And then we'll kind of revisit this in 4 weeks and kind of see what the world looks like at the time.
Sounds good. Just to clarify, though, we are going to cancel the events through June, correct? That will be including the senior luncheons and the dime jingle and whatnot. I just want to clarify.
Yes. Yeah, let's cancel those.
All right.
Thank you.
And I will say I appreciate the board and staff kind of diving into this. It's a little bit messy on a Zoom call, but the reality is this board is so involved in all of the events that we put together that this is the avenue that we had, and this is kind of the conversations that we need to have. So I appreciate it. We will add this to a future meeting to discuss. And if there's nothing else on that topic, I'll go ahead and move on to the next item for discussion. All right. Item C this evening is the ill-worn membership for the Village of Montgomery, and Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just wanted to take a quick minute. Throughout all the process here of, obviously with the pandemic, we've been sitting in on several webinars and different conferences. And one of the things that came to light throughout some of those were the ill-worn program that's available out there. So this is much like what the village already participates in with the IPWAMAN, which is the agency which we can basically get disaster assistance from. The ill-worn is specific towards the water industry. So like I said, a lot of the same principles, just very specific towards water. Obviously, as this pandemic has gone on, water has been something that hasn't been on the forefront, which we think is a good thing, obviously. But we want to ensure that we're creating and producing safe, drinkable water for our people. And so the ill-worn process, basically what it does is it provides us with emergency preparedness, disaster response, mutual assistance from other agencies, and different things of that nature. So providing us with equipment like pumps and generators, chlorinators, different things of that nature. The advantage to the ill-worn versus the IPWAMAN too is there's no cost of enrollment or membership cost, so it's free. So the village has we've taken the steps to apply to become members of the ill-worn, and look forward to any opportunities that we would have to either participate or receive help in the future. We're hoping we don't need it, but it's a great tool to have and just something that we wanted to share. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right, before we get into, or I guess the first item for new or unfinished, I know Administrator Zolfel just had some updates for us.
Yes, just wanted to update you on the property tax rebate. The checks will be going out tomorrow, I believe. If not all tomorrow, they'll be out this week. We ended up having 2,502, which compares pretty similarly to the last 2 years. So just wanted to let you know that.
And for anybody watching on the live stream, that is the $45 property tax rebate that you would have had to apply for earlier this year or last year, correct?
Yes, would have to apply it in by December.
Okay. All right. Anything else from you or any of the board members or staff?
Did we get a final count on the water billing assistance program? How many people were able to utilize that?
We have not finished taking those yet. Last I knew, we were over 1,500.
Can we put something out on the village Facebook page about that, just as a reminder to residents to the steps that they need to take? Residents have reached out to me and said, well, Steve, I haven't gotten a call back or I haven't gotten an email back. And I said, as long as you follow the rules in the paper and give your correct information, they're not going to call you back. Can we put that in that Facebook page as well?
Yep, Corinne and I spoke this morning about pushing the information out again over the next couple days, so you will be seeing that come out.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have an idea right now that 1,500 is out of 9,000 residential accounts? How many accounts have been paid? Like, what's our top end we're looking at as number of people who may utilize this program that we've made available?
I know.
Do we have an idea?
I know Justin has looked at that, so I'd have to look to him for those numbers. I don't know if he has that handy or not. If not, we can get it to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have emailed that this afternoon when I'm thinking about this thing.
So,
As of last Wednesday, those that had actually paid versus those that had asked for assistance, the numbers were almost identical between February and April of those who actually paid. So we expect roughly 6,000 payments by the end of the month here in the next couple days. So
what is the cutoff date for people? Is it April 30th? Or you guys still accept calls from people after April 30th?
we will accept calls after April 30th.
Okay.
So if a resident has paid their bill for this month or the last 2 months, and then they say, oh yeah, I forgot about that, can I get it next month? They can get it next month?
I mean, we're not looking at the
Nope,
next
but
billing
it was
cycle.
only for the April bill.
April bill only.
I mean, our next billing cycle's not till
So if they paid
June.
the April bill, but then they changed their mind and they want the credit for the April bill, are you gonna give them credit? Or once they pay it, is it done?
we've already had people that have actually paid their bills and asked for the credit, and we are not going to give refunds for that. So, in effect, they do have a credit on their account now.
And
Okay, I have a clarification. I got a clarification point, Justin. The letter said utility bills and will pay up to $100 toward your total bill. People said that's kind of confusing, up to 100, but if you have a $90 bill and only 40 is for water and whatever for garbage, what do they get as a credit for? In fact, Doug and I talked about this. Doug thought it was all water. I thought it was for the whole bill. I didn't think we'd give out credits, like you said, but what is it for? Is it for $90 for the total bill or just for water?
It is $90 for the total bill.
Okay.
So up to $100 on your whole bill. Okay.
Correct.
Makes it simpler.
yeah.
Well, you wouldn't be 100 if the guy's bill's 90. He's just getting rid of that 90, correct? He's not getting that $10.
Correct.
You're not doing $100 for everybody, in other words.
No.
No.
Okay.
So just to clarify what Steve was asking for, I don't think he was just asking for the information to get pushed out again. It was to clarify that you're not going to be notified, letting you know that they got it.
Right, and that, we pushed that out
Right.
previously, and we'll push that out again as part of it, because we'd gotten those questions, so we did push out information explaining that previously.
And, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, because we have a web form you can fill out with that, you get an email response, and so you know that it was submitted. If you email, it's not terribly hard for us, and I think we are responding via email. It's those voicemails that staff is receiving that are hard, and we just can't physically be calling everybody back there.
And when you leave a voicemail, it tells you in the message that you won't be receiving a call back.
Okay.
But the emails are easier for us because sometimes it's hard to understand the name or address or things, so the email's definitely easier, but in both forms, the person is told that they will not receive a response. That it's been, them leaving that message is all they need to do.
So, and just to clarify, at this point, because we're still in April, if somebody did pay their bill and let's say, has since lost their job or needed the assistance, we are adding that credit, is what Justin was
That is what Justin said, yes.
I understand that because we're still in April. A week from much better understanding of our total exposure on this, because we'll get 6,000 or 7,000 folks that either, like mine, set up to auto pay at the end of the month. By Friday, that will have been paid, and our risk, we'll know who's left, and we can kind of talk about that then, what the exposure is. So.
Yep.
We'll talk about it in a week. I mean, we could do it prematurely, but we certainly don't want to leave it open-ended forever. But for those folks that pay their bill, once we move on into May, I think we end up kind of changing things a little bit in May. So we'll talk about it in a week.
I have a question, if I may.
You may.
Issue. Mark, first off, thank you for getting that street light fixed at that address. The resident was very appreciative. There is a spruce tree that's hanging over the sidewalk pretty severely on the corner of Kate and Griffin. It's probably to the point now where we should take it out because it's just going to continue to grow. And eventually it's going to take over the entire sidewalk. Right now it covers about half.
We'll definitely get a look at it.
And then I have one more issue. And this isn't Public Works related. There was an article, there's a lot of residents in Fairfield, Foxmore, and Blackberry Crossing have expressed concern to me about an article that pertained primarily to the Sugar Grove Board and the extension of a road. And they thought basically highways were going to come through the developments and that it was going to be essentially another Mayfield Drive type of situation. Has any other board member run into or heard concerns from people about that?
Yes, I had someone call me today, Steve, over that, about it going all the way through.
Yeah.
And, and as you know, we can't control what happens north of Jericho. We can only control what happens between Jericho and Galena Road as far as, the road extension.
Sure, but
many of the people that bought their houses out first, and this was back when that subdivision was put in, they said Sugar Grove, when they get money, or King County, they will make that road all the way up to Jericho Road. And therefore, the road was made 4 lanes through there and then a dead end because there was going to be more houses, but the farmer wanted like 100,000 an acre or whatever, and they stopped building houses there. Or those houses would have been made and that road would have went all the way to Jericho. Back in 2005, you would have had a road all the way to Jericho. That's what the planning was. I think Pete can tell us that. Correct, Pete? Or Rich?
That's correct. Yeah, that road, that corridor has been planned with the intent of going all the way up to Galena Boulevard in Sugar Grove down to Galena Road on the south border of Montgomery for many years. And so that has been on our transportation plan. That's the reason why you look at Gordon Road in the village now, and there are no homes fronting, there are no driveways onto Gordon Road at all, either north or south of 30. And the intent would be to have that as a neighborhood collector to go up to Jericho Road and up to Cedar Grove. So that's been in the planning process and shown for quite a number of years. So
Yeah, 2000.
Right.
You know what?
And I agree with everything that Rich has said, but the fact is that we're not going to let this turn into a Mayfield Drive type situation where residents are complaining, because, you know, I did a residents on radar thing on Griffin this past weekend, and that's just a little stretch of road, and about 50% of the vehicles were speeding. One of them I got going 56 miles an hour, and it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So I don't want a situation like that to either occur in Fairfield or Blackberry.
So, yeah, I totally get your concern. And I just pulled up the village's transportation plan, which it's the same plan that's been updated, I think, annually or every so often since I've been involved, over the last 10 years. It shows that stretch of road to be a major collector, and thus the reason for the design up through Sugar Grove. I mean, I honestly, and Pete, maybe you can delve into this a little bit deeper, but the village of Montgomery, the village of Sugar Grove, Kendall County, and I believe Kane County are all in the planning stages of what the future of that major collector road would look like as a north-south thoroughfare. So I understand that some of the residents in those areas are going to be concerned about increased traffic volumes when it comes to it. But that has been the plan and will be the plan for this region going forward. So Pete, do you have anything else?
Well, that's correct, Mayor Brawley. As long as we've done planning on the west side of the village, the extension of Gordon has been in the plan. So that was intended for some time. I would say that there's a bit of a distinction between the Mayfield configuration and Gordon Road in that Gordon is a no-load collector, so we don't have any driveways or buildings that front the roadway. And so it was always designed to carry additional traffic, and the extension of Jericho was certainly contemplated to give the subdivision a second access. And I think only the downturn in the economies, really stopped that. So right now, as the mayor has stated, there's a concept study being done, and it's a partnership between Kendall, Kane, Sugar Grove, Montgomery, to look at a concept for extending that corridor from Galena Boulevard and Sugar Grove down to Jericho, and then from Jericho, complete that open section and then the connection to Galena Road on the south. So that's the concept. The cross sections are proposed. They vary between sections depending on the or the anticipated traffic volumes. I would say the Montgomery section from Jericho south is intended to be limited to strict truck traffic, is what's been discussed. It'll be up for the other jurisdictions to decide how they want to manage traffic in their boundaries.
The only comments I've heard related to that was the folks in Foxborough Fairfield not having a second access point out of the subdivision. I've not ever had anybody else concerned. I anticipate it's more like a Lakewood Creek Drive, where it's a connector and no driveways or anything. It's designed to be a more major road.
That's correct, yes.
I think what we're going to run into, or probably should prepare, is just some informational piece on that. It's always been the plan to make that connection. Right now, I think what Steve's getting, and what I've heard a little bit, and some of the I know the staff are going to hear from, are residents in the subdivision saying, "Oh my God, what do you mean? just because you didn't know that was the plan doesn't mean it's a bad plan, or you might not agree with the plan. I understand it's my subdivision too that this affects, but that is the plan. That has been the plan. So I think a informational piece or some time spent on why that's the plan and some of the pressures that alleviates at 30 and Orchard and some of the other parcels would probably be beneficial to have ready to go. Because those questions are going to come in. It's going to help get that information to the residents to hopefully understand those who are affected while no homes front that road. A whole bunch of them back up to it. So you've got people who are rightly concerned about increased traffic, but just some informational piece on even why that's 4 lanes. You know, that it's just that's been the intention and the design from the jump. And I think it'd be nice to kind of put a little bit of that history together in a one piece, just so that people have an idea that it's not something new being sprung on anybody. It has always been the intention to make that connection.
Pete, doesn't this...
Hey, if that farmer would have sold the land at a decent price, we'd have more houses, and that would have been even a better, larger subdivision. But that road was always planned, and Bertram Road used to be a gravel farmer's road, and when that goes through Gordon, Bertram Road's going to be gone, I understood. That's in the plan back 205.
Yeah, so just to go back in time, the US 30 is a strategic regional arterial, and it has limited access points. Some of the access rights were, a majority of the access rights along the corridor were purchased by the state of Illinois. So in order for us to get, even to get Lakewood Creek connection to 30 and Gordon Road connection to 30, we had to submit a traffic plan to Springfield to get those public access points approved. And as part of those considerations, you know, it had to be a public road, it had to connect to something, and have a terminus that made sense. Otherwise, they weren't going to grant a connection to the strategic regional arterial. And so there is a limit on, that's why the spacing is pretty significant out there. And I can't remember if it's quarter mile or half mile, but you know, each time we wanted to have a road cut from a subdivision, we had to go to Springfield. And at one point they said, look, you can't just keep coming back. You need to look at the entire corridor from 34 all the way to 47, and let's find out where you're going to locate in a logical manner. And so we did submit that plan. I can't remember the date anymore, but that was submitted to Springfield. It was approved, and it did also contemplate the abandonment of Bertram with the understanding there would be another road to take its place at an evenly spaced area. And we can get back a copy of that original corridor plan so people can see it, but you know, that was all part of it, and you know, the extension of Gordon was included in that plan.
Pete, doesn't the study we're working on have a public open house component?
Yes, and I because of the COVID, I think it might have been a virtual. I'll have to check. It does, Administrator Zofel, and I don't have the specifics. I'll have to check on that and get back to you. It might have been a virtual open house. I'm not sure how they managed it.
Okay, I couldn't remember if it had changed to virtual, if it was still in the future, but I knew there was a component to it.
I'll check on that.
The intent was to have a public hearing prior to COVID-19. Now we were going to have a virtual public hearing. Well, I shouldn't say a virtual public hearing, but have information go out on the village website and other locations so that there could be information obtained from residents.
And not to get ahead of ourselves here, the plan that that these agencies are currently working on is a concept level plan.
Yes, this would even be pre-phase 1. So this is concept level only. The idea was just to explore where the center line of the future roadway would go, what it might look like, and start to get comments from a landowners and others so that, you know, it could be taken into account. The other thing that was discussed is, you know, when an opportunity presents itself, perhaps try to get some funding to do a segment of the project, whether it be to try to get an overpass over the railroad or build a section of roadway. So that was the other reason to start doing some concept level planning.
And yeah, right. And so this is the first step in long range transportation planning. After this, you'd have your phase one, which there is no funding for any part of that at this point.
Right.
So we don't own property, you know, running through this area, at least on the northern end. And so this is, I don't want to say it's a long way off, but it's certainly not near term. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it's pretty significant time frame since development has slowed so much. And I guess the other thing to keep in mind too, and I think to Trustee,
I'm Youngerman.
Yeah, having a little bit of a age relation, I guess. I don't know, but anyway, to one of the trustees' points, you know, it's the start of the project. It's not the finale of it, and it does go. You know, if you look at it in terms of spacing, it's about midway between Orchard Road and 47. So it provides a logical corridor for an extension, and I think we all can appreciate that. You know, Orchard is, you know, having some relief valves at these other locations to get some local traffic out is not a bad thing. So, anyway, but I'll get the information on the transportation plan that was approved some time ago, or the corridor plan. We'll check in on the schedule on the virtual open house, and it wasn't really a public hearing. It was more of just a format to get comments, and then you know, a brief description of the project and why it's being contemplated now.
If I could add one thing also, I've heard from some other people in Huntington Chase that have current concerns, and those concerns are going to grow with the additional traffic, and that's the Huntington Chase Park that's on the east side of Gordon, and they have concerns right now as far as children from the west side of Gordon crossing Gordon there at 4 lanes to get to the park. And a lot of their concerns is once we extend that and traffic gets heavier, what are we going to do at that intersection to protect people trying to cross the street to get to the park?
Yeah, there might be stop lights or stop signs too on there. I don't know if that was ever thought of, but I do know you also remember that Gordon Road on our end, the land there, the farmer I was talking about owns the other side, the north part. So actually, if Sugar Grove's got to work with him to buy that part, then he'll probably sell either both or. So that's a problem too. I mean, I think it's a long-term, like Pete said, long down the road idea.
I think to answer your question, Trustee Geyer, I think we would probably treat that situation much like we did the intersection of Concord and Gordon. As traffic volumes increased, as you know, we took a look at that intersection, which was a two-way stop intersection, stopping traffic running on Concord and not on Gordon. And when that traffic amount increased, we moved forward with making that a controlled 4-way stop. So, you know, I would think that would probably be our approach. But you know, this is all the reasoning why too. It's good to have to get comments back so we can get that kind of information, so we can start putting that into some of our planning moving forward. So I think those are some things to highlight, and that's why we value that feedback.
Perfect. All right, anything else on that or anything new or unfinished? Okay, hearing none, you guys can read the future meetings there. It was a pleasure meeting with everybody tonight. I do want to thank the press that logged in. I can see on the call with us. Again, really do appreciate that. And we do not have executive session, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Go ahead.
Penny, you fall asleep?
No, I have to stop typing to unmute myself, so I apologize. Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
I'm just trying to keep it exciting. Trustee Marisak,
Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Spurling,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yes.
and Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.